as Israel goes, so goes the West. The reason that we're all obsessed with that part of the world, when there's many wars we could be talking about, is because, that's where the tire hits the road.
Yes.
If Israel goes, Europe goes.
Well, that's certainly always been my belief. And some people might say, well, how could a state that's not yet 80 years old be so central to the West? You go, it's not because it's just any other state.
And it's not exactly 80 years old.
No. And so if you begin to contend with what it is the death cults are onto and what their supporters in the West might be onto, when they call for the destruction of Israel, they always do it as a precursor to the downfall of everyone else in the West. And
you mean like Iran, for example?
Whether it's the Ayatollahs in Iran with the little Satan Israel, great Satan America, Britain, Canada, medium-sized Satans, whether or not it's the Iranian revolutionary government doing it for
the protesters are right. Israel is the vanguard of the West.
Well, here's the thing. You see, when students at Columbia, when their group, as well as vandalizing their campus, chasing Jewish students across campus, assaulting janitors and much more, all, of course, in the name of fighting for the oppressed, when they call in their statements for the complete destruction of Western civilization, they do mean it.
The spirit that possesses them means it.
It's just that they recognize that a country of 9 million people in the Middle East, surrounded by countries that wouldn't mind its demise, is an easier thing to destroy than a country of 340 million people like the one we're sitting in.
It's a microcosm of the world.
Right.
You know, it's because the civilized so-called countries of the world are a tiny fraction of the countries of the world.
Yes.
And so Israel, in its existential condition, replicates the condition of the West in a microcosm.
Yes. And of course, one of the, if not the absolutely central things in the West, which is the tradition of the Bible. That the point I'm getting to is...
You talked about that in terms of the celebration of life.
Yes.
Right? Life more abundant, for example.
The point I'm getting to exactly is that when these people, whether it's the protesters in the West or the death cult itself in Hamas, Hezbollah, and others, I think they might have chosen their target well. I think they're onto something. They do know that if you take this out, everyone else is vulnerable next. It's very clever target selection. Not just because of size, but because of
theologically
what it means.
Absolutely.
What it means theologically. And that's why I get onto this thing that, you see, again, it goes back to your thing about how ignorant we are in the West about the reality of evil, among much else, is the presumption that everyone wants what we want, for instance, which, among other things, is also just narcissistic projection. I mean, maybe everyone else doesn't want what you want. Maybe they want something totally different entirely. But one of the things...
Like their women to be covered from head to toe so they can only see out one eye and never talk. Maybe they want that.
Maybe they want that.
Since they're pursuing that.
And, you know, one of the things I thought of a lot when I was thinking, when I was covering the... You know, obviously this is also, as you know, a first-hand account of Israel's response in the conflict. One of the things I thought about a lot was what the spirit is that animates in response to the death cults. And I realized that it is, it's there in our texts. It's there in the books.
Therefore choose life.
Therefore choose life. Deuteronomy. Sure. Deuteronomy. Yeah. Choose life that you and your descendants might live. When I was thinking about that, I thought, I was reminded of that phase of the new wave atheists in the 2000s, of which I was distantly a part, who used to say things like, well, the Ten Commandments, they're so obvious. I mean, they don't need to, why do we need to be told not to murder? Because you were murdering. Because humankind didn't know that you shouldn't murder.
There's envy. We could talk about envy. If you don't think that's an a priori condition, you are very naive.
So I heard that for many years about the Ten Commandments, and it was done in I think, usually naive and flippant way. But when it comes down to this one, literally, the commandment to choose life in the face of whatever odds.
Yeah, whatever odds.
As the psalmist says.
That's the story of Job.
Exactly. And as the psalmist says, I shall not die, but I shall live. One of the things that I recount in the book is just the number of examples I came across from people who had stared right in the face of death, right in the face of evil, and who even in the face of it and in the aftermath of it had at the core of their being, I shall not die, but I shall live. And even in a military response, you see the difference between these things.
Right, you talk about Hezbollah breaking apart and everyone fleeing after the leadership is taken out, right? Well, that's why the 100 men possessed of the proper spirit can defeat 12,000 enemies.
Yes.
Because the enemies aren't united by anything transcendent.
One of the things that Hassan Nasrallah, the now late leader of Hezbollah, had said for many years was the jihadist death taunt. He had said it many times. There's a famous time in the 2000s when he says it in a speech in Beirut, when he says, the infidels' great weakness is that they love life. But we love death. And this is our great advantage. He and others around him really meant this. They wanted, just like kidnapping children, kidnapping civilians, they knew that if you go to a society focused on life, even to the extent of the minimization of deaths of their enemies, that if you go for a society that loves life, desires life, fights for life, that you can terrorize them, you can terrify them with your orgiastic celebration of death. But as I described toward the end of the book, as the year of conflict starts to turn around, as Hassan Nasrallah goes to meet his maker, from a Beirut bunker, when Sinwar finally crops above ground in Rafah, with only 3 other people with him, one, by the way, a bodyguard who was working for the UN, or UN agency. When Sinwar comes above...
UN.
Yes. Again, Sinwar's bodyguard paid for with our taxpayer dollars. But when the architect of the 7th finally comes above ground in Rafah, which, of course, the military expert Kamala Harris had told the Israeli army not to go into because she looked at the maps. But it turned out when they went into Rafah, they found their enemy. And when you see these people, there is an answer to the death cults. There is an answer to the cult of death, which the IDF has shown is the destruction of their leaders, the killing of the psychopaths who would lead a society in this way, and a demonstration of the values of your own society. Now, that has been incredibly hard because there hasn't been a day I've been with the Israeli Defense Forces in the last year and a half when I haven't seen how they've been operating and then read the world's news the next day and read it as if these were polar opposites of each other. As I say, Israelis enter hospital. Yes, because the hospital was somewhere where there's footage of hostages from the 7th being taken in on the 7th and not for care. Whether it's hospitals, schools, anything else, there was just nothing the IDF could do from the moment they went in, indeed from the moment before they went in, when they were not going to be misrepresented by the world's media in a grand way. But, and I've been asked many times in the last year and a half, why are the Israelis so bad at communicating? The truth is, it's extremely hard to communicate what you're doing to a world which in significant part has already decided that you're the bad guy.
And one that's manipulated as well, very profoundly, by the actors behind the scenes.
If you've listened to us for a while, you know our stance on fluoridation. Today, more than 70% of the U.S. population has fluoride added to their water sources. That is a violation of personal rights, plain and simple. On the Jordan Peterson podcast, you've heard how governments have no problem with mass medicating their populations without consent. On this show, we refuse to drink compromised water. That's why we use Cove Pure. Cove Pure is a countertop reverse osmosis system that filters your water in 4 stages, stripping away fluoride, contaminants, and the arrogance of bureaucrats who think they know what's best for you. Their clear wave reverse osmosis technology is lab certified to remove up to 99% of impurities, leaving you with only the purest water possible. And unlike the government, Cove Pure lets you have your water exactly the way you want it. It has a simple touchscreen that lets you choose the exact amount or temperature that you want. Hot, cold, warm, whatever. Cove Pure does it all instantly with the tap of a button. Not only does it look amazing, the best part is that there's no need to drill into pipes or call a plumber. You just set up Cove Pure right on your countertop, fill it up with water, and plug it in. Your health shouldn't come at the cost of your autonomy. Purify your water today with the same system that Jordan uses. And because we've partnered with Cove Pure, you'll get $200 off if you use our link in the description box, covepure.com/Jordan.
And all the things that we talked about play into this. The refusal of the West to admit to the existence of malevolence, our inability to understand the difference between a just and an unjust war, our willingness to hide in the shibboleth that war is bad, which is hardly a moral claim at all.
No, I mean, I would say that people, there's a saying, I quote somebody saying the book is sort of idiot British student survey, in which a large number of people said they wouldn't be willing to fight for their country, even if it was under existential threat. And
well, they've been taught that.
Well, yes, and when you dig down on the reasons why they said they wouldn't even be willing to fight for their country under existential threat, as the young men and women of Israel have had to do for the last 18 months, the most common reply among young British people of the same age was, war doesn't solve anything.
Right. War, yeah. Well, and you think about how easy it is to make the moral claim, for example. I've heard many people make this claim. I'm against the death of women and children. As if that's some sort of moral claim.
Well,
as if that's not the basis of common humanity. No one can capitalize on that.
Yes.
On that profession of their morality.
Well, and the other one I come across is people, by the way, and they don't really mean it, by the way, because again and again, the people who say that Israel is killing women and children are apologists for at best and supporters for at worst, a group that videoed themselves killing women and children. And many of the people who say that the Israelis, many of the people who say that the Israelis are doing this are the same people who say that Hamas did not. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's another level of the psychopathy now in the West. Mm-hmm. It's like, I've said repeatedly since the 7th, what did we have in the 2017 period? Believe all women. Mm-hmm. Turned out, don't believe women if they're Jews. Mm-hmm. Don't believe it then. Don't believe it if the rape is caught on camera by Hamas and they're boasting of it. Don't believe them. But then, a year down the road in the war in Gaza, these same people who deny that Hamas raped women on the 7th will say that Israeli soldiers are raping women in Gaza. Every single time it's some form of projection,
well, and that's that last-ditch attempt to what would you say, to salvage the oppressor-victim narrative. That's the core. That's the staff in the center of the belief system.
But yes, I mean, to go back to the main point, yes, the main response that I hear is people who say things like, I don't like war.
Yeah. Now, your book ends, and we should wrap with this because we're coming near the end. Like, your book ends, I guess, on a quasi-theological note, right? It seems to me that the underlying conclusion that you drew, having admitted to the existence of evil, let's say, in a theological sense, at least technically, right? Because it's a language that expresses that landscape. It's at least that. Yes. And it is a pointer to the opposite, right? That's the thing. To say it again about contending with evil is once you admit to its existence, especially in its lowest forms, you're forced to grapple with the fact that the opposite exists. And then that points you towards heaven, so to speak. Now, you you structured your book so that your conclusion, which is actually somewhat optimistic, is that despite being faced down by a death cult that outnumbers them geometrically, the Israelis are still there.
Yes.
And they're thriving.
Yes.
And there are forces within the Islamic world that have recognized that and that are doing their best to what? Not even so much reconcile themselves to that fact, but perhaps even to welcome it.
Yes.
And that's held after October 7th, which was a complete bloody miracle. That was the Abraham Accords. And that's what I want to talk to you on the Daily Wire side, because I would like to talk to you. We didn't get into the issue of Islam versus Christianity and exactly how that might be conceptualized and mediated. But I'd like to do that on the Daily Wire side for all of you who are watching and listening. That worship of life, right? It's the axiomatic presupposition that it's no different than the presupposition, I think, that people are made in the image of God. It's just different language. And that points to what? That points to a transcendent good that's encapsulated in the Jewish scriptures and in Christianity as God.
Yes.
God's the spirit that demands that life be valued above all, really, above all.
Yes.
Not above God, perhaps. But and that's more like a definition, you know?
Yes.
And then the question is, and I thought about this for a long time, well, what if you abandon your belief in the goodness of life? Job refuses to do that. The antinatalists abandon their belief in the goodness of life. The cascading consequences of that are genocidal. That's where it ends, always.
Yes.
And that's what's happening.
But the opportunity to see the opposite of that.
Yeah.
To see the opposite of the antinatalism, for instance.
Yeah. Israel has the only positive birth rate in the Western world.
And not just among the religious, among the secular as well, which is blowing the minds of a lot of demographers.
As it should. As it should.
We thought this is only...
As it should.
You'll notice that your most secular Tel Avivians will be having more children than themselves. They're more than 2 children a couple on average per relatively
The Israelis have pulled that off, and the Hungarians haven't even been able to manage it, even though they're trying very hard.
Yes, but that points to one of the central things in it. You probably can't fake that stuff up. The Hungarians, for instance, and I think the Poles, when they wanted to encourage people to have more children. It's economically. Yeah. If you have a 4th child, you will pay no income tax on the 10th year of this. Maybe people don't structure their lives like that. Why is it that...
So there's an anti-Marxist thing to say.
But how about if... I mean, look at the difference between a Hungarian couple who are working out the tax break advantages of having a 4th child, but deciding not to have a 2nd child, versus an Israeli family in a war zone still creating life.
Right.
That's not a tax incentive thing.
No.
That is at a far, far deeper level.
Right.
And it is to do with a commandment. It is to do with a commandment. And, you know, I would just add one other thing to that, which is I was talking the other day with a friend, a biblical scholar, and he said, you know that that famous quote on the walls of the UN, the quote from Isaiah, and he shall judge among the nations, and he shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Now that's a magnificent sentiment, of course, and who wouldn't want to follow it? But the thing that I just realized is, look at what comes before it. Let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Right. That's called a precondition, Douglas.
You don't get the idea of war being no more or peace breaking out among nations unless the word goes out from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You can have one, but you can't have it without the other.
That's right.